Welcome to Sips with Saints, and my name is Rick Bizdock. This is my wife.
Delaine, Bizdock.
Yep. And today in this episode, we talk about what is Sips with Saints and
Why we
started it, our own kind of lives and testimony, and how we kind of encountered the Lord. And really, that's ultimately what inspired this to be a thing. Great. So without further ado, let's start the episode.
From your point of view, why did we start Sips with Saints?
I think because we have a lot of these conversations where like we see the culture moving in a direction away from like classical ideas of like what is a family,
yeah.
what is a man, what is a woman.
Before you continue,
sorry,
we're sipping on stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What are you sipping on?
I'm sipping on what?
Nothing, I'll tell you after.
Oh, okay. On what is this? Banahaw coffee from the Philippines. So thank you, Philippines.
And I am sipping on a very watered down matcha latte that I made.
And maybe she was chuckling because of my mug. This mug is one that
Stolen goods.
One that I designed myself.
That's true.
It has a special origin story, which maybe we'll tell someday.
Yeah.
Has a picture of the Sacred Heart of Jesus in front of, or bleeding onto the Eucharist. Not one that I created. Definitely copyrighted by somebody else. I forget who. And then there's a picture of SpongeBob here with a name tag that says adult. It says, look out, buddy, adult.
Yeah, so we really enjoy drinks and coffee and teas and
Yeah, and I think, so why we started this was because we wanted to record some of what we talk about in terms of like, we see the culture moving in one direction, and then we feel like we don't want to move in the same direction as a lot of those things. And we like to drink coffee and tea and things, and have conversations, as I'm assuming a lot of you do too as well, who are watching, whether it's coffee or tea or whiskey or whatever your thing is.
We should do wine one of these days.
We should. Yeah, and then we can talk about wine as well. That'd be fun. But the idea is like to sit down. People don't really sit down and have conversations anymore, especially if you know that you disagree with somebody already. You're not going to like sit down and hear them out, right? So I feel like that's part of our desire is to say, okay, we're sitting down. You can have some coffee or something too, depending on whenever you drink, or whiskey, whatever time of the day you're watching this. And
it's 5 o'clock somewhere.
Yeah, you can comment, you can say whatever, and then we'll try to include conversations as we go on with the podcast, or at least message and whatnot. But that's the idea, that we can sit down, even if we disagree, if we have different ideas, we can tell stories, which is what we're going to do today, tell our own stories. And maybe in the future, we're going to interview people.
That would be really fun.
And hear their stories. Just hear like what's going on in people's lives. And then ultimately, at the core of what we're searching after is like that we both believe that there is a God who purports that there is a truth and a better way of living. And I think that's what we're all trying to seek that out. It's like, how do I become the best version of myself?
Yeah.
To quote Matthew Kelly. That's one of his big lines. But yeah, how do I become the best version of myself? How do I become, in Christian sense, how do I become a saint? But even if we weren't talking to somebody who was Christian, I mean, we're all trying to become better, right?
I would hope so.
Yeah.
I don't understand if that's not outside of a religious perspective. I don't know. I don't understand if someone's living without that.
I'm trying to become a worse version of myself than I was yesterday.
Yeah, that would just be quite
Yeah.
silly. I think for me, it's one, we have to shout out Pints with Aquinas because Sips with Saints
Yeah.
sounds very similar. Um, a fun fact about our relationship is that we met online, and if it weren't for both of our mutual love for Pints with Aquinas and listening to that podcast, Rick would have never signed up for Catholic chemistry, and I
Mm-hmm.
would have never stayed on Catholic chemistry.
Yeah.
We were both watching the same live stream on the same day, obviously,
Yeah.
because that's what a live stream is. Um, and he signed up, and I decided to stay online and to stay online dating at that time because I was pretty done with it. Um, and so, because we both love pints, um, not because, but there was a little bit of influence from Pints of Aquinas.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have our own podcast.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, for me, a lot of it is that I would want this podcast to sound like a conversation that you'd have if we knew Saint Padre Pio and we had like coffee with him. A lot of his writings, like obviously his books about him and books of his collective letters and everything, are really good, but a lot of it can sound so profound. I
Mm-hmm.
remember when I had my big reversion, I'm like, how will I ever be this holy? How will I ever get into this mindset? But in reality, like, one, they lived in a different time period as us. Two, a lot of the normal, ordinary day to day life did not sound like those letters.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it just sounds like a husband and wife chatting
Mm-hmm.
about a topic. Um, and I think that like maybe it should be sips with hopeful saints, but it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
sound as good. So I guess my objective with our podcast is to show like we're not theologians, so like
Mm-hmm.
we're not on the level of Matt Fradd and his like the people that he interviews,
Yeah.
because
Catholic Answers and all
yeah,
of the different
and
people. Yeah.
like Jordan Peterson, we don't have PhDs, we
Mm-hmm.
don't have any of that. We're just very ordinary Catholics trying to navigate through this society and try to be holy.
Mm-hmm.
Like what does that look like? And it doesn't look perfect. And
Mm-hmm.
obviously in our own sharing of our story, it'll show that
Mm-hmm.
we're not at all experts about being holy, but really just this is our invitation for kind of an online community to say like it's okay that things are hard, that holiness is hard, that things don't look like um a wonder, like we have a very simple setup, like
Mm-hmm.
things aren't always aesthetic, and that's kind of a
Mm-hmm.
facade of social media nowadays where everything looks so perfect. I'm like, no, we also have a toddler and she messes everything up, so it's like our house doesn't look like um, the normal influencer house of like,
Yeah.
oh, look at how beautiful and pristine our house is. Like, no, we have. I recorded like some behind the scenes right before we pressed record, just out of like I don't know, just amusement because like what we're surrounded by outside of this little corner of this room is not pretty. It's very
Mm-hmm.
we're in my parents' storage room essentially because we live with my parents, and there's just stuff everywhere. Um, but it's life like that. There's stuff in our lives that either help us, hurt us,
Mm-hmm.
or neither.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, that's why we kind of started this podcast. Um, yeah, any other thoughts?
Um. No, I
Sip
think we
break.
can get into why we're here. I mean, that's why we're here, but why are we here? Here.
Cool. Should I start or should how long are we doing these? Because we both can go on forever.
Yeah. Well, we'll just give like, um, maybe like, okay, what what was your experience growing up, and then after you had like your reversion, as you mentioned, like as you got to know Christ more, what did you desire with your life? And yeah, so what changed? Why did it change? What was the beginning?
I can still be
What
so
changed?
long. Yeah, so cradle Catholic. However, I will say, like, my parents being immigrants, they didn't the Catholic Church here and how even by each parish very much functions differently, and then even more so from what they knew from in the Philippines. So my brother and I were raised Catholic. However, after our first communion, we didn't really we weren't really in any religious ed or any formation. Um, and we both weren't confirmed in high school. So there's just very loose, kind of nominal background of
Mm-hmm.
Catholicism. Um, and growing up, as any child does a lot of like soul searching.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to find myself, all the good, like teenage bop kind of movies of like, who am I? What do I want to do? Yeah, and kind of middle school to like my sophomore year of high school, I was in this ministry at my local parish because some friends were in it, and they're like, "You can come hang out with us." And we served. We sang in choir every week and everything like that. I enjoyed music. I thought it was cool. Had no idea what mass was. Had no idea who Jesus was. Like, I knew some prayers, like I knew like the Our Father, Hail Mary, Glory Be, and the Rosary and everything like that. Had no idea like the concept of
Mm-hmm.
like an intimate relationship with Christ. Like no idea what the Eucharist was, um, and that's kind of how I functioned in that ministry for 4 years, because we were kind of just told like my peers around me also weren't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily good influences. I mean, they weren't being formed either. I don't think. I really don't. I really can't say for sure. But my perception of my or like my experience was that like I didn't really find any answers about who I am, um, and like who God was. So I left. I left the church for. I didn't really like say I wasn't Catholic. I
Mm-hmm.
just wasn't practicing. I had
Mm-hmm.
no like solid foundation to keep me there.
So the ministry was more of like a cultural ministry than it was like a spiritual ministry.
Yeah.
Right.
Cuz I remember that like there was just like a lot of things that felt really at odds with each other in the ministry, where like I knew my friends were doing these like X, Y, and Z, which was like very opposite of what I knew of the church.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, and their parents were in it. So in my head, like these leaders of the church and their children should be forming me, some rogue kid that
Mm-hmm.
just in the ministry, and they weren't doing that. Like they
Hmm.
were pushing me to do things that didn't fit, like didn't sit right with me. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of immoral things, slightly illegal things, and I was just
Illegal things.
like underage drinking
Oh, okay.
and things like that. And like I just knew like that doesn't really vibe well with me. Like
Yeah.
we say we love God and we're doing all these things in service and worship with God for God, but like then we turn around and we do all these things, like that
Yeah.
doesn't make sense. So I was like, I'm out of here.
Mm-hmm.
um didn't go back until pretty much my first year of college, when one of my friends from that group actually invited me to this thing called Jesus Jam. And it was the first time I'd ever experienced, one, contemporary praise and worship,
Mm-hmm.
and two, like young adults
Hmm.
that were really on fire for Christ.
Hmm.
And I was just like, they have something. Oh, sorry, Jesus. They have something that I want.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know what that fire is in their eyes. They look really excited. They look alive. Um, they look like they know who they
Mm-hmm.
are and who they belong to. And I want that. So I kind of just threw myself into that community, and I joined the band, had really horrible worship skills.
You were playing guitar, or what were you playing?
I was playing guitar. Well, I was singing initially, and then I started filling in for people, playing guitar, playing piano. I don't know why they ever stuck me on piano because I had little to no skills. And then I started serving on confirmation retreats, and that was really fun. I only did background stuff. I was never a small group leader, so I did music, photography, or I was just like someone praying and interceding for these confirmation retreats. And then like five-ish retreats in, I go into the office and I'm just like asking my friends, like, what's confirmation? You say it's a sacrament. You also say that Jesus in Mass is a sacrament. Like, that must be an important thing, and confession's a sacrament. So I'm like, confirmation must be important. They didn't know I wasn't confirmed. I really didn't understand it either. So then 9 months later, I got confirmed. And it was probably one of the greatest days of my life, bar like obviously getting married and having our child. But like, I really felt very certain and stable in my decision as an adult to get confirmed and to be anointed, the Holy Spirit, and really taking my faith seriously. So I dove in like fully.
So one more time, how old were you when you
I
got
was
confirmed?
almost 20. I was like a week away from being 21.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So this was like 2017. It wasn't that long ago.
That's why I like your testimony, is because I think it's really relatable to a lot of other people who grew up in a Catholic environment, maybe, and then wherever, I mean, maybe they're still not fully convinced, but like, I think your story is important for other people to hear, because sometimes we just put ourselves into these two different parties. Like, either you're really conservative and extremely Catholic and homesteading or something,
I was
or you're like living in the world, and maybe you have liberal leanings, or maybe you're very far liberal. But it's like, we don't really we don't see people's stories where they're kind of going one way or the other. We don't really hear that.
When I first got confirmed, I definitely had a lot of things that I did not like about the church. And I didn't understand about the church. But there was definitely like a very, whether it's stubbornness or like just like a solid foundation of like knowing God is real and I have to do this. Like, I can't turn back. And that's kind of where I continued my journey from. Like, so I struggled a lot with the church teachings. I even struggled with the Eucharist. Like, I was like, no way did Jesus like come into bread? Like, why would you become bread out of all things? I struggled a lot with like the roles of women in the church. I struggled a lot with marriage, not even just like talking about LGBTQ stuff, but just like the sacrament of marriage itself. I did not believe that like a man could actually love a woman. I didn't believe that children were good. I was like, no, I'm good. So even being confirmed, like, even though I knew this was right, I knew like I have a lot of things I need to like reconcile, and I need to figure out. But there was.
Do you feel like you had figured a lot of those things out in your heart at the time that you were confirmed, or were you still working on?
I was 100% still working on almost all of those things.
Yeah, because again, like, sometimes people are like, I don't know, like, maybe I would go. I'm curious, but like, I don't think I could do it because there's all these things I disagree with.
Yeah.
Right. But you were kind of like, no, I really think that there is a God. I really feel like
this is true.
But I don't understand all of the parts around it necessarily. But I wanted start going here.
Yeah.
So that's like an okay thing to do, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not easy. I definitely didn't know a lot about even myself. Like, I didn't even have a lot of self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
But looking back, like, I remember thinking, like, oh, I don't, like, why can't the church, like, change that? Or why can't this be allowed? Or why can't that be allowed? I still held somewhat of the, like, uh thought process of, like, we should be allowed to cohabitate,
Mm-hmm.
because, like, how am I supposed to trust anyone?
Mm-hmm.
And that spoke loads about, like,
Not wanting to commit.
yeah. But I think the first step for me, I'm not saying for everyone should just be like blindly, go ahead. No. Like, but for me and my personality, I needed to jump in and commit with the Lord before I could do all of the rest, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's definitely true to my personality, because I have a fear of commitment.
Well, you did a pretty good job.
So. Yeah, obviously there's been a lot of healing. So yeah, that's kind of, since then I have been very determined to, like, have a deep and intimate relationship with Christ, and to foster that. And whether or not I agree with a teaching or doctrine or whatever, like, I always just held it up to the truth of, like, I know God loves me. He wants heaven for me, and I know what He says is true. Does this fit? Like, does this thing fit that mold? And a lot of it, like, I had to pray through it. Like, I didn't want to get married, and I heard very clearly in prayer, in adoration one time, like, I was like, Lord, I'm so ready to be a sister. I can't wait to be religious. It's gonna be so great. And he was like, nope, you're gonna get married. And I was like, parts of me, I was like that rich man who walked away sad from the Lord, after he said, like,
I've observed all of these commandments.
Yeah, I've done all of it. I've gotten, confirmed. I'm praying and blah, blah, blah. Like, this, like, how do I continue to follow you? And he says, like, sell all your things. And I was definitely that person. I was like, I don't want to get married. And I remember thinking, like, we'll just hold off on that, Lord. Clearly a lot of healing has happened since then. That was a while ago too.
I think there's a correlation too of, like, you see that a lot in scripture, of, like, where, and this is not to tangent too much from your story, but you see that a lot where somebody's doing really good. They're like, hey, God, I'm doing good. Check this out. He's like, okay, but now I'm going to ask you to do, like, a little bit more. Because we can all, like we were saying in the beginning, like, we can all be better.
Yeah.
In so many ways, or perfect different aspects of our character, of ourselves. You see that with Nicodemus too, right? Nicodemus even believes in, like, is starting to believe that Jesus is the Christ, right? And Jesus invites Nicodemus and says, hey, you should come follow me. And Nicodemus is like, oh, but I like my life and I'm old, and how am I going to travel? But I think the correlation there is, like, whenever we realize that we have an opportunity to sacrifice comfort in order to chase greatness, we should always choose greatness over comfort.
Yeah.
Right. And there's that Pope Benedict XVI quote where he says, we weren't made for comfort, we were made for greatness.
Yep.
And I think we sell ourselves short when we try to adopt too much of these things, like, oh, like, maybe I believe this and I want to be Catholic, but the church teaches that. So, but I'm just going to, like, keep this thing for myself, right?
Yeah.
And just not try to work on it with the Lord. Like, we don't.
Oh,
that's the thing I like about
I...
Christianity is, like, we don't get that right to just say I'm good enough.
Yeah.
Or my life, everything.
There's a
looks
lot of
good
wrestling.
Enough. Yeah. And it's a continual effort going forward.
But now we're here. Now life looks very different, obviously, being married and having a child, and we'll share more about that in the future.
Yeah. So tune in to future episodes.
Yep.
We'll get more of my story later.
Yep.
But I think this is good for now.
Cool.
We'll let people be interested and intrigued. If you have a similar story to Delaine, or if you have questions or whatever, feel free to comment.
I think we are going to have a section per podcast, maybe episode, whatever, where we do kind of read certain comments and things like that, if it pertains to our conversation, just because we want it to be a conversation. We want it to be friends chatting at a coffee shop over some coffee or tea or wine.
Cool.
This is a nice coffee shop if they have wine too.
Yeah, I've been to coffee bars that have like wine as well.
Wine sounds really good right now. Cool. Also, if you are one of the first 20 subscribers on YouTube, then you will be getting a message from us, probably me, but from us, and we will be giving out free stickers of this, essentially. Sips with Saints. And we're basically on all of the podcast thingies. Our baby is crying. And we are on Instagram and everything like that. Also, I have an art Instagram called Handmade. Everything will be, the baby's awake.
Her nap is over.
Yep. So thank you for tuning in to our intro, and we hope you have a great day. God bless.